Understanding how your camera's light meter works is incredibly important if you want to take your photography to the next level, get out of auto and start using your camera manually. Welcome to the PhotoGenius channel. This video is very kindly sponsored by Squarespace. Hi, Paul here from PhotoGenius. Welcome to my channel where I post regular photography tutorials designed to help you get more from your digital camera. If you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Now this is a light meter. Using this, I can measure light and pretty much nail every single photo every single time. Now the good news is you don't have to go and buy one of these because your camera has one of these built in. So in this video, I'm going to show you where it is and how you can use it to improve your photography. So let's take a very quick look at this light meter. I've already set the ISO to 200. Shutter speed is set to 1/10 of a second. Press the button on the side and the meter calculates that f5.6 is the required aperture to get a balanced exposure based on the available light. Now remember these numbers because in a moment we're going to set up a camera using the same settings. Now you should be able to see the light meter on the screen on the back of the camera, but if you've mostly been using your camera in the auto mode, there's every chance that you're not seeing the light meter. And that's because in auto, the camera's making the decisions and often it won't show you things you don't need to worry about. Well, I think it's time to get out of auto and into the manual mode, because in the manual mode, we can not only see the light meter, but we can take control of the camera, be more creative and take better photos. Manual mode is M on the camera dial on the top of the camera. Now in this video, I'm using a Canon camera, but you can follow along with any camera because they all do pretty much the same thing. Let's look at the camera settings. Firstly, ISO. I've set the camera's ISO to 200. That is usually my preferred default setting and it's often recommended by the camera manufacturer as well. Next, aperture. I've selected a lower f number, f5.6. The lower number means the aperture is fairly wide. Now that's going to let lots of light down the lens. Shutter speed, my starting point is 1/10 of a second. Okay, so now it's time to take a look at the camera's light meter, which you can see both on the screen on the back of the camera, but also through the viewfinder. Now remember, this is a light meter. Now that means we can use the light meter to evaluate and indicate how much light will be recorded by the camera if we were to press the shutter button. Now you may see in your camera manual that the meter is often referred to as the light evaluation meter, but just to make it easier for this video, I'm simply going to refer to it as your camera's meter. So as you can see, I'm now outside, all set up to take a picture, and note that I've replicated the settings shown on the light meter back in the office. However, because I'm now outside and the sun is shining, the light levels are very different. So let's see what happens. To take a light meter reading with this camera, I simply push the shutter button halfway, and as you can see from the marker, the meter is indicating overexposure. Now firstly, I'd rather that marker not be flashing, and ideally I'd rather see it in the middle of the scale at the 0, because that's what we want to aim for. That is a balanced exposure. So with the ISO at 200 and the aperture at f5.6, you may recall that I set the shutter speed to 1/10 of a second. Now that is a very slow shutter speed and is better suited to when you're taking photos in poor light, like maybe indoors or later in the evening. To show you just how overexposed the image will be, I took the shot anyway. So with the shutter speed so slow and letting far too much light into the camera, I pressed the shutter button on the top of the camera to wake up the meter and start to increase the shutter speed using the dial on the top of the camera. And as you can see, after a few moments, the indicator stops flashing and begins to move towards the middle. This is because the shutter speed is getting faster. Once it reaches 0, we have a balanced exposure and I can take another shot. Now, just because the meter is balanced, it doesn't mean I can now just forget about it. Let's see what happens when I move the camera to take another shot. So next I decided to try for a different composition and capture an image of the lighthouse from a different angle. Now I've not made any changes to the camera settings. Once the camera was set up on the tripod, I pressed the shutter button halfway to take a light meter reading, and as you can see, the meter is now showing a slight underexposure. And here's the underexposed image. Now, of course, this image is underexposed, and we didn't actually have to take the image to see that because the meter told us in advance. Well, let's fix it. So to fix this and get more light into the camera, I need to open the shutter longer. This is called slowing the shutter down. So this time I'm dialing to the left using the same dial on the top of the camera. And once the meter was balanced, I was ready to take my shot. So as you can see, the camera's light meter is a really valuable feature of the camera that can help us see in advance of taking our picture whether our image is going to be perfectly exposed, overexposed or underexposed. Now, did you know that we've been looking at the light meter via the LCD screen, but you can also see it if you look through the viewfinder. It's displayed alongside the shutter speed, aperture and ISO. A quick tip, if you're looking through the viewfinder and you can't see anything, it may be because your camera's gone to sleep. A quick half press of the shutter button should wake it up again. Now, this channel would struggle to exist without the support of our sponsors, so I just want to take a moment to tell you all about Squarespace, who have kindly sponsored this video. Squarespace are the all-in-one website building platform that you can use to showcase your brand or business online. I'm using Squarespace myself to design a new website. In no time at all, using their drag and drop system, I was able to build a landing page without the need to understand any coding or web design. Just like me, you can create a gallery to showcase your photography or set up an online store to sell images and prints. Plus, Squarespace make it really easy to fully customize the layout, colors and design to suit your individual style or brand and truly make it your own. To check it out for yourself, go to squarespace.com/photogenius for a free trial and use the offer code PHOTOGENIUS to save 10% off your first purchase. Now, because this video is an introduction and a beginner's guide to using the camera's light meter, you've seen me get a balanced exposure simply by adjusting the shutter speed. Now that's fine, but adjusting the aperture and the ISO will also affect exposure. This time using a Nikon camera, here is the shutter speed, aperture value and ISO. And as you can see, currently we have a balanced exposure. Now let's say I want to use a slower shutter speed to add some blur to my image. As you can see, the moment I start slowing the shutter down, which lets more light into the camera, the meter reacts, and at a shutter speed of 1/4 of a second, the image will be very overexposed. But using the aperture, I can then reduce the light by selecting a larger f number. This means the aperture is actually closing down and is therefore smaller and has reduced the amount of light passing through the lens. And once again, we have a balanced exposure. So taking a perfectly exposed image is about finding the balance between three things: shutter speed, aperture and ISO. They all affect light and are collectively known as the exposure triangle. Now, I have made a video all about exposure for beginners where I do go into more details, and I do recommend maybe checking that one out next. You'll find a link in the description below this video and also at the end of the video. So my goal in this video has been to show you how the light meter works and to show you how to get a balanced exposure by getting the little marker right in the middle on the 0. But now things are going to get a little bit more interesting, because a balanced light meter does not always mean the perfect exposure. Now what I mean by that is, if when taking pictures all you ever do is balance the meter and take photos, then you're always taking photos based on what the camera thinks is the perfect exposure, but what you think is the perfect exposure, that's what matters. That's why we're getting out of auto into the manual mode. So when taking pictures in the manual mode, I think balancing the meter is absolutely a great place to start, but what I would recommend doing is to try and purposely over sometimes and underexpose your images sometimes, just to see what happens, because some images will actually benefit from being slightly brighter or slightly darker. Give it a go. So I really hope you've enjoyed learning all about the camera's light meter and how you can use it to take better photos. If you did enjoy the video, then please consider giving it a thumbs up, because it does help the videos get noticed and that helps my channel grow. If you're not already subscribed, consider subscribing. I do try to put out new videos every single week. I want to say a big thank you to Squarespace for kindly supporting my channel and also sponsoring this week's video. And of course, a big thank you to you for watching. I hope to see you again sometime soon. See ya. Bye.